The situation in Gaza is a major concern for Singaporeans, regardless of race and religion. Those who agree, please step forward.
Personally, for us, it's a major concern, but when we observe the society in Singapore, is it a major concern for everyone? I wouldn't say it is.
I'm not emotional about this. What should I be emotional about?
It's just because we disagree with one side, you label us as A, anti-Semite, or B, terrorist. Is it so, binary in that sense that it's just one or the other?
When I'm on social media, I'm unsure if it's sensitive of me to post about it and inform my social circle about it.
When we talk about race and religion, we have to really be measured, right? And being good Singaporeans, sometimes we do not want to offend others.
And if we don't carry out this conversation properly, I think it's going to tear the fabric of the society.
Hi, my name is Mardia. I am a Year 2 Public Policy and Global Affairs student with a second major in journalism.
My name is Chris, and I'm the founder and CEO of Provident, which is a fee-only investment management and a wealth management firm.
Hi, I'm Walid, and I'm an associate professor in politics at NTU.
Hi, I'm Felix, and I'm a lecturer at the Public Policy and Global Affairs at NTU.
Hi, I'm Audrey. I am the founder and sustainability consultant at Thought Partner Eco.
Hi, my name is Muhammad Imran. I'm founding director of Dialogue Center.
Welcome to this special dialogue on Gaza by Lianhe Zaobao and Berita Harian.
We'll be presenting some statements on the Gaza issue. Please indicate your view when prompted. Now, may I invite everyone to please move to the waiting zone now. So the first statement is, the situation in Gaza is a major concern for Singaporeans, regardless of race and religion. Those who agree, please step forward. Maybe we can start with Mardia. You can share your thoughts.
If you take it from the lens of a human, a basic human, everybody would have the same value of compassion and of empathy, of being able to see themselves in the plight of the Palestinians. As Singaporeans, we have a lot of access to channels of information. So with that access comes a certain responsibility to be able to act on what knowledge we have of what's going on around us, even if it's not in our country. Because as a human, we naturally would empathize with what fellow humans are going through.
Yeah, I think it's a concern. I'm not sure whether it's a major concern, but I think Singapore or Singaporeans should be concerned. It is a humanitarian crisis. We have tens of thousands of people who have died because of this crisis. These people are not just soldiers, but they are innocent lives. And the second reason really is because of Singapore's founding principles. I mean, we are a multi-religious, multi-racial society. Of course, the Muslim would be very concerned with the situation in Palestine. And of course, you have Christians and Jews that may have certain feelings for Israel. And if we don't carry out this conversation properly, I think it's going to tear the fabric of the society. So I think it should be a major concern and we should have this conversation. And thirdly, of course, the issue at Gaza is not just a local issue. It has got ripple effects. I mean, if it prolongs, it could be an outbreak of war in the Middle East. Other countries may get involved. And that's not good for not just Middle East, but for the world at large. It can affect oil prices, and that can affect the financial markets, and that affects investors, and that affects all of us. And if this goes out of hand, there could be extremists that takes the opportunity to have terrorist strikes.
Singapore as a country which functions on the basis of international law and international institutions. So if there are countries which are willy-nilly breaking international law and rules of international institutions, I think that puts Singapore in a more precarious state. I think this is the biggest moral crisis in our lifetimes. And it is a major concern. It should be a major concern, but it is also already a major concern for many young people. Of course, for Muslims, yes, definitely, Muslims feel, I think we cannot deny there is a particular affinity there, but I think now the mobilization for Palestine and Palestinians goes way beyond the Muslim community.
Gaza is and should be a major concern for Singaporeans, and this should go beyond race and religion. Firstly, it's a humanitarian issue, and this goes beyond just, oh, it's because of a terrorist attack, you know. And secondly, I think it's been brought up as well, it's about this whole idea of international law, international order. It's breaking down. I think, we should just go beyond the superficiality of the situation and really target what's the core issue over here.
I think I agree with a lot of what's being said already. Decisions we make now will affect the future, so our future generations, right? So thinking about that, it is now our time to take a stand with the situation in Gaza. And the situation is not a small family squabble, it's an active genocide. It is people facing oppression and occupation. So something as grave as this, we should pay attention to it and we should be majorly concerned about it. But it is not about race or religion. It's about a humanitarian issue. It's about fairness. It's about justice.
Thank you. We have a last man standing at the benches behind. Imran, would you please take a step forward and share whether you disagree or you are unsure with the statement?
My position is I'm unsure about the statement. If you ask me whether it's a major concern to me, yes, I would say it's a major concern for me personally. Whether it should be a major concern for Singaporeans, yes, I think it should be a major concern for Singaporeans. But then the question asks me whether it's a major concern for Singaporeans. I'm not sure because we don't have data. What we do have is anecdotal evidences, and it also depends on the circles that we are interacting with. I've interacted with circles who have not even raised this concern. I've interacted with circles who see this as something that should be discussed a lot. So I'm really unsure, even though I would like people to have greater concern for this.
May I throw a question as a moderator? There's a part of this statement that is regardless of race and religion. And we know that there are some portion of the community, perhaps non-Muslim Malays, perhaps those who are slightly more elderly who might not have so much access to this information online. They might not feel so much about this. Is this something that you observe in your daily interactions as well? And what are some of the reasons why perhaps they feel further from this topic?
I think personally for us it's a major concern, but when we observe the society in Singapore, is it a major concern for everyone? I wouldn't say it is. And people are generally more concerned or like they would be more active in something that impacts their day-to-day life directly. Even in the period during like the Ukraine-Russia war, it affected our chickens, right? The supply of our chickens. We don't have chickens because like Malaysia stopped exporting it to us. But do we go beyond that and think about why we are not getting the chickens? What is the root cause of it? It's actually related to the war because Ukraine is a major exporter of chicken feed and therefore it trickles down to us. This is why something that is so far away also affects us. But I'm not sure how many people go beyond the surface problem of we don't have chickens to think about what's the root cause. And that's very worrying.
As someone who teaches on international relations, I tend to look at things in a more neutral kind of perspective. There are many sides to the coin. And we can't just say that, oh, it's an emotional issue. It is not. It's about breaking down of international order. And if there's no one that is able to hold it together, then what are we left with? What's going to happen to the rest of society? And I do agree that Singaporeans tend to have this concern, immediate concern, very domestic concern. It's about me and what's happening around me. Something else across that is not my problem. And sometimes Singaporeans need to open up because we can't work in silo. We cannot see things in silo.
Several years ago, the Russia-Ukraine war started. And at that time, because I'm in the investment industry, and most of the time we're not talking about humanitarian issues. We are talking about how it affects markets. So Singaporeans are more concerned about the money part. because of the war and the commodity prices are rising and how that affects financial markets. So I think, in a way, we are concerned about the pragmatic issues and question on whether the Muslims are more concerned. I mean, my own experience, and really it's a very small sample size, not representation of the entire community, is that I think the Singapore Muslims, at least my friends that I have, they are more pragmatic. They don't look at the war in Gaza as an attack against the Muslims. They see it as a political situation. And I feel very grateful about that, because if our Singapore Muslims see it that way, then it's a huge problem, because they feel that their faith is being attacked, which is not the case here in Singapore.
What do you mean? What do you mean by that?
Most of the people that I talk to, they see it as a war between two states. And so, like I said, I'm grateful, because when I have conversations about this issue with my Malay friends or my Muslim friends, I don't see that emotion going up and saying that, this attack against my faith and we should do something about it. So that's what I meant.
Maybe the first disagreement of the day, and you mentioned about don't be emotional. I'm not emotional about this. What should I be emotional about? What should I? And I guarantee you, the stuff that people are emotional about are of, I would say, sometimes of less gravity than this, right? I think it's not helpful to say that, we shouldn't be emotional about it. Don't let, emotions is what guide us to do this. Emotions about this is what make us human. I cannot fathom if we say that, you cannot be too emotional about this, right? The question is, what do we do with the emotions? And I think that's a fair discussion. How do we channel it to maybe more productive things which are more suited to our context and so on? So I definitely agree. People don't see this as an attack on Islam, the way you phrase it. Of course, people don't, because this is a political war. But at the same time, it's the affinity that is mentioned, that you mentioned, I think we also cannot pretend that it's not true, that Muslims are the ones who feel a lot for this. And Muslims have felt about Gaza and Palestine way before October 2023. This is an issue anyone who's familiar with Muslim grassroots would know that this is an issue that Muslims have always been concerned about. But what we see today is an activation of youth sentiments, of people beyond the Muslim community. And you mentioned that Singaporeans are mostly concerned about dollars and cents, perhaps. But also we need to talk about which Singaporeans, because there are some Singaporeans who are really affected by the humanitarian crisis beyond dollars and cents. I grant Imran the point that probably that's not the most, or we don't know whether it's the majority of Singaporeans, and I think that's a fair point. But I do think that there are Singaporeans who think beyond dollars and cents and see this as both a legal issue, but also as a humanitarian and moral issue.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think what I'm saying is that it's not that we should not be emotional about it. We can't control our emotions, but we can certainly control our response. I think what I'm saying is that people are emotional over humanitarian issues. They are not getting emotional and angry because they think it's an attack on the faith, but rather, yes, they feel sad. Otherwise you'll be apathetic, and you'll be really, really sad that today we are only concerned with bread and butter and money, and totally apathetic about innocent lives that are being lost because of this.
The point about the Muslim community being more concerned, I don't think I agree. I think that they have more access to the context. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're more concerned. Then the question is, how do we give this greater context to other communities, right? And then media plays a very important role. So what is being reported, the language that's being used, the terms. In the very beginning, I've spoken to people who don't even know that Palestine as a place exists. They see it as, a conflict between Israel and Hamas. But Israel is the name of the place. And then when I ask them, what is the name of the other place? They go like, I don't know. So if we want greater understanding, media has to help.
Can we have all of you step back? We will have the second prompt very soon. The second statement is, Singapore should do more for Palestine. Those who agree, please step up. So perhaps this time round we have Imran share first.
Because this is a statement of hope, right? So personally, I feel Singapore should do more. And one of the things that I hope Singapore should do is to actually recognize the state of Palestine. I know we've made the commitment that we're going to recognize it, but if we were to speed up the process, then it would really help in terms of building up a real state for Palestinians. And I know Singapore has done quite a lot, almost 20 million, if I'm not mistaken, of donations in 9 tranches. And at the same time also, Singapore has been training the civil service and helping out in the possible reconstruction effort of Gaza. These are commendable. But what more can Singapore do? In that sense, I'm not too sure, because there's also the question of, could we do more? Because there's a lot of considerations, and I'm sure it's not an easy decision to be made by policymakers, especially for a small state like Singapore. So even though I think Singapore should do more, whether we could do more, I'm not sure.
I have some suggestions for us. First of all, we shouldn't always hide behind the fact that we are a small country and we are a small city-state, and then we can't really do much for other people, or it wouldn't have an impact. What we can do more, I can think of 2. First is, I agree with recognizing the state of Palestine. The second one would be, at the air show, we could not show Israeli arms. And then the third one would be, do not clamp down on peaceful acts of solidarity.
When I read the question, Singapore should do more for Palestine, the first question came to my head was, what more can we do? Then I took a step back and I think very carefully again, Singapore in what sense? Are we talking about the government, or are we talking about the people of Singapore? So when I look at the government, yes, I think, again, I do agree with the two of you, we should recognize the state of Palestine. It's about time. And I think there was an issue that we should not be recognizing it because it will cause more problems for the Palestinians. Then my question came to my mind is that not recognizing they are already suffering. Recognizing what's going to change. Is it more suffering? So we talk about governmental level, then it should. In terms of Singapore as Singaporeans, I think it should do more. Not just in terms of donation, not just in terms of monetary help or training people, but rather having a measured conversation on this issue. Truly understand and try to understand the background of this issue. Do not just brush it aside. A lot of things is that you can agree to disagree, but let's have a conversation about that.
So I'm going to be repetitive, but just because of the importance of the issues, I have a few suggestions as well about what Singapore should do. And I mean Singapore government, but of course Singapore society together as well. So the first, obviously recognize Palestine. The second one, already mentioned air show, but I just want to repeat it. The third one, medical evacuations. I think we have one of the best healthcare systems in the world. We have one of the best education systems in the world. I think we can take advantage of this. Medical evacuations, and I understand we do not take refugees, and that's fine. I'm not asking for a fundamental shift, but we can treat them in hospitals. Maybe if you want to limit it to children, amputees, whatever it is, and then we send them back, right, to Egypt or to Gaza, to Palestine, wherever it is. So the fourth one, as Audrey said, to give spaces for people, more spaces for citizens, especially young people. There is a sense of helplessness that they are watching and they cannot do anything about it. So we need more release valves. I think that's what the government should allow for. I understand that no matter what Singapore does, it's not going to solve the Palestinian crisis. That discussion needs to take place in America, right, in the heart of the Western world. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't do anything, because for 2 reasons. One, it's about our own moral compass as a society. We want to look at a country and we feel proud. This is our country, right? But secondly, also, we cannot help solve the Palestinian crisis, but we can help some Palestinians. It's very well in our capacity.
It's just adding on to Audrey's point that she raised in the first question, which is about the language that we use in our media. So recently there was a journalist who was actually killed by an targeted Israeli missile strike named Anas al-Sharif. They actually echo Netanyahu's accusation that he's a terrorist, and that is the reason why he was targeted. To repeat it and to expose the citizens to this narrative can mislead them. More space can be given through the media in order to develop a more balanced as well as informed perspective. Secondly, is also about recognizing the state of Palestine. One of the reasons I gave for recognizing Palestine being counterproductive is because we want to keep the channels of communication with Israel open. And I agree that that is like an advantage. We should use our close historical and diplomatic ties to actually show that we are serious about wanting to pressure the Israeli government.
Thank you. We have one person left. Christopher, can you step to your seat?
Well, I didn't expect I'll be the last person.
Can you share with us, do you disagree or are you unsure and why?
Actually, I'm more on the fence because, whenever we take an extreme statement like this that should do more, well, firstly, I don't know what else we can do, which I'm hearing a lot of contributions from the panel, so I appreciated that. Actually, I've been quite impressed with the Singapore government. I spent 31 years with the Army, NSF regular NS man. I stepped down as an NS man at the age of 51 years old. And I know the strong relationship between Singapore and Israel and the amount of help that they have given us, not just when we started the SAF, but throughout the years. And so I was quite impressed with the government that they have that courage to speak out against Israel, that they are potentially contravening international humanitarian laws. So I thought that was quite a courageous act, and I was actually quite surprised. And in terms of humanitarian aid, as mentioned, I think we have done, can we do more? Maybe, but I think we have done quite a significant amount. And I think the government has also openly both condemning what has happened, the Hamas attack, and also stated their stand against Israel. And they did say, like many of you mentioned, that we are prepared to recognize Palestine as a state, which of course has not happened yet. So I thought from the Singapore government's perspective, actually, and I do not know because we have limited resources. And sometimes it's always easy to say do more, but we don't know what are the constraints that we have. But some of the suggestions I hear, practical suggestions, are helpful. But I think we can do more as Singaporeans. The very first step is to understand the issue. I think most of us don't understand even the history between Palestine and Israel. We don't understand the historical context. We don't know how to appreciate this. So I think that part we can definitely do more. And I don't think the government is in the best place to do that, because usually when they communicate, it's not easy to understand. But I think a lot of other agencies can do a better job in talking about the historical context, the issues that we are facing right now in a layman manner. It's a good first step.
Whether the Singapore society can do more also depends on what the government allows, right? So what we can safely participate in is a lot of donation of money, charity work. But what is beyond that, there needs to be space given and a safe environment to believe that you can do more in a non-aggressive way and it will not be penalized and it will be allowed, then we can do more.
I agree with you on some level that the government has done, I think, a decent job managing this. It's not an easy issue. Foreign policy-wise, our foreign policy will always roughly remain the same. Correct me if I'm wrong, international relations professor. But domestically, this is more touchy, I think, because it could separate people if not managed well. But I wouldn't go as far as saying it's courageous, right? I don't know, is offering humanitarian assistance something? Is it a courageous act? Is it a necessary act? Is saying that Netanyahu or Israel has gone too far, is that really courageous? I think it's okay to recognize that the government has done a pretty decent job. At the same time, I think we can say that I think as a Singaporean, I would like to see more, right?
I'm just going to deep dive into a very specific context. And when you see children and innocent lives being killed to that extent, then it becomes a moral question, right? I'm questioning from the level of Singaporeans in general. Can we have greater inter-religious solidarity to bring out the moral concerns out in public? We've seen that being done on issues of extremism, on issues of terrorism, where different faith organizations come together to issue statements, right? But when it comes to Gaza, somehow it's missing.
Why?
Well, there could be multiple reasons. One of it is possibly because it's sensitive, But I don't think it's sensitive because that is the moral conscience of faith to actually come together and voiced out. And so far, I've not seen an inter-religious solidarity on Gaza on that effect.
When we talk about sensitivities, who are we hurting here? If we are having a conversation, mindful the kind of conversation that we all have, like here, being measured, I think we all understand the sensitivities involved on this particular issue. Everyone can and will take sides. Everyone has their opinion. But the thing is that, when we talk about sensitivity, then are there more issues or are there even other issues that are more or less sensitive than this particular issue on humanitarian crisis, famine, genocide? So we talk about sensitivities. Where's the spectrum? Where's the level of sensitivities are we talking about?
The sensitivity may come from certain theological positions. And we've been trained in Singapore when we talk about race and religion, we have to really be measured, right? So especially when it touches on belief system. So I think that's where the sensitivity is, and being good Singaporeans, sometimes we do not want to offend others.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, but then again, we bring back the question, Gaza is not about
Exactly.
race or religion, it's about a political system.
Yes. Agreed.
Maria?
I guess just to add on to how having more interreligious solidarity could add more critical thinking to this, is that for example, we see cases of the churches in Gaza actually also being bombed, but then this doesn't gain as much traction or exposure. So as for me personally, when I'm on social media, I'm unsure if it's sensitive of me to post about it and inform my social circle about it, because I don't want them to think that I'm trying to call them out for not acting. But I think that if the religious leaders actually show that it's more of a humanitarian crisis and amplify that, magnify that, then people can be more comfortable talking about it regardless of their religious or racial background.
The burden of multiracialism sometimes I feel is on the Muslims, because the Muslims are very used to, if there's a terrorist attack that has nothing to do with us somewhere, the Muslims are very, very quick and very okay with condemning, with distancing ourselves and saying that Islam doesn't stand for this. We have almost gotten into autopilot whenever that happens, right? So even after 7 October, our Mufti actually sent a letter to the chief rabbi, right, in Singapore, and saying that. So sometimes I do ask, right? Sometimes I do ask, where's my letter now? Where is it now? Where is this solidarity that we are always quick to show? We are always quick to distance ourselves from this. Somehow, sometimes I feel that is not reciprocated.
Thank you. We will move on to the next statement. May I invite everyone back to the waiting zone. The third statement. I feel uncomfortable discussing the Gaza issue with friends of a different race or religion. Those who agree, please step forward. Okay. Those who disagree, please step forward. Okay, for the first time, we have 2 seats. The rest not occupied yet. Okay, maybe Christopher, you can start first.
Yeah, I don't think I feel uncomfortable at all, because if I'm discussing this, it's not discussing a religious issue, it's nothing to do with race, as we have spoken quite a bit about it. It's really a humanitarian issue. So I have no problems actually discussing it with my friends of any race or any religion. But the problem here is really our level of understanding, even my own level of understanding on the issues confronting us. And like I mentioned, not many Singaporeans can go into a deep discussion because we don't understand the historical context. And so the discussion may not be very deep, and we always just end up with, okay, so what can I give? And it's always giving of money, which I would say is the easiest thing that we can do. Yeah, so I have no problem discussing with people. It's just I find that we cannot go deep into the discussion because of the lack of understanding.
I don't feel uncomfortable at all, but I also recognize that I am sort of in a bubble, and I am in a maybe slightly different space than some other Singaporeans, because I write about Palestine very, very openly. So people around me know that these are my stances. So the people who discuss with me, a lot of times they are the ones who agree with me. Although I do get sometimes, trolled by people, but those are not friends, right? We're talking about friends. I do not feel uncomfortable discussing Gaza with friends of a different race or religion, but perhaps my friends are uncomfortable discussing them with me. Perhaps I am open to the possibility that maybe somebody who is more ambivalent about it, or even maybe more pro-Israel about it, maybe they feel discomfort. But on my part, I wouldn't have an issue because I think those are precisely the people I want to reach. My post, I don't want them to be read by people who already agree with me. There's no point. I write in order to convince and persuade people to my point of view.
So those who are unsure, you can join the conversation and share your thoughts. Maybe we can start with Mardia.
Okay, so I guess also like repeating the example that I brought up about how when I use social media, like I'm not sure how to frame it in a way that doesn't offend anybody or make them feel like they're being scolded, because like quite an important part of talking about this issue is not to make people like scared to approach it and to make them feel like it's impossible to have like different opinions from me. Because I guess I'm quite used to talking about the issue with people who are of the same race and religion as me, because I know we have the same, like, generally the same stances on it because we've been exposed to it. Then it means that I haven't really been having conversations with people of diverse backgrounds. So it's not that I'm uncomfortable, it's just that I have a lack of experience in doing so. If I were to, like, try and have these conversations, I would take it from the perspective that they're open to hearing my opinion instead of like being like overly cautious. But at the same time, sometimes you don't really know how people are feeling inside. So you want to also keep that in mind. Yeah.
Well, no, I actually don't feel uncomfortable at all discussing the Gaza issue. I think what I feel perhaps uncomfortable is when you have to force it down others, your opinion, and that becomes uncomfortable. And I think what we've been talking about is we should create that safe space where everyone can have that kind of conversation. The background is not October 7th, is not about Hamas. They are there for a reason. Or you want to go back to colonial era? Sure, let's bring it. Let's talk about it. Balfour Declaration? Sure, bring it on. But are we going to have that kind of conversation? Because we won't. We can't. Do we have that safe space? And I think, sometimes we're discussing this Gaza issue. It's not about emotions, really. It's about being that the topic itself can be emotive. So then it raises up different things because people can get agitated. It's like, oh, why do I know? Why do I need to know? It's not about why you should know. It's that, do you know? To begin the conversation? Do you want to find out more? You don't have to go and dig deep, but let's have a conversation. And I think that would really help to approach that issue.
I think for me, there are many different levels. I agree that personally, I don't feel uncomfortable discussing this with friends, but they might feel uncomfortable. And also, I think this is also something about what is the societal norms when you interact with people in your circle. Like friends usually talk about, have you seen that movie? Or do you have problems with whatever at home? They talk about these things. A lot of people are very politically apathetic. They don't care about societal issues as much, or they don't really talk about it. They don't care about climate issues as much. So it's not just about Gaza. It is like, at large, we don't talk about these things normally. And then to bring in something as sensitive and serious as what's happening there, it's like, very weird to wedge it in. But obviously, I'm happy to discuss. It's just like sometimes when you try to bring the topic up, it gets shut down very quickly, or like they change the topic very quickly. And then in that way, I don't force it down because what's the point, right? So if people are curious, if people are really open to learning more and having more of a discussion, then yes. Otherwise, I would rather channel my efforts into something more productive and practical, like the Palestinian Scholarship Initiative that Walid is also a part of. So doing things that are tangible and that I know we put in the work will get something done, rather than wasting time and energy on trying to convince someone that's not open to listening to begin with.
I agree. in some cases, it can be discomforting. Discomforting because it's really bears down on your emotions when you try to talk about this issue. And sometimes you can't really put it in words, especially after seeing some images, right? And I can also imagine on the other side, people also find it very discomforting to discuss, especially when you're at a dinner table and you're eating and you bring up an issue of starvation. And how do you respond to that, right? So people tend to shy away. Sometimes I also feel that maybe this is not the right time to discuss things. That's one. Secondly, it also depends on who we are talking about. It's not easy to broach a conversation with people who have some preconceived ideas and opinions. For example, if people think that any discussion of Gaza means that, or any criticism of Israel means you're an anti-Semite, right? How do we even broach a conversation when people are already fixed in boxing people, right? And then also with certain groups of people who have very deep beliefs on Israel. And they wouldn't want to talk about it openly also. And it's very difficult to start a conversation on that because it touches on their religious sensitivities also. So these are some of the difficulties that I face. And what more if it's in an online space where it's really unproductive, when there is no structure to argumentations, right? So that's where the discomfort is.
I think maybe just throwing a question. When you mentioned that when the topic is being brought up, it's automatically shut down by some people. So if we are not having this discussion among our social circles, like how do we, do you think you understand the other perspective, like how do we move past that?
I don't think it's being shut down in a way whereby people are not interested. And I like what you said when you mentioned that people may be uncomfortable talking to you because when they talk to you, you are probably a lot more into this and you know more. And when I talk to you, I don't have enough depth to carry on a conversation with someone who knows more. Because the truth is we all have different interests, we all have different concerns, and we are all expert in different subject matter. And it's like me. If you talk to me about personal finance and investment literacy, I've got a lot to talk about and I'm very passionate. I've got issues with the industry and I may come across too strongly. And somebody may have less interest in investments and personal finance and they may find very uncomfortable talking to me because I'm very strong in my views. And they move on to another topic because they just don't know enough to talk and I may come across too strong. So I will say that I don't think they're shutting down. It's just that they can say beyond a certain level and they can't contribute anymore. And then they want to talk about something else. And I've learned to be, when I'm in a conversation with friends, I've learned to talk less and listen more, to hear what they are more interested about and talk at their frequency. And also I'm trying to understand that we all have different concerns and issues in life that we don't see. They may have other things that are occupying their mind, and this is definitely not the top issue that is occupying their mind. And those things that they are more concerned with may not be superficial.
Sometimes the difficulty of engaging this kind of conversation is not just with people of a different race or religion. It could also be with people of your own religion or race, right? And I bring this example of sometimes I do meet Muslims who do not distinguish between Judaism as a religion and a faith and the political situation in Gaza or Israel. And they tend to mix the two up. But when you try to tell them, look, these are two different categories, then you get attacked also of being pro-Zionist, right? So that's where the difficulty of starting conversations. Or if you don't, some people may not necessarily engage in BDS, for example, like they eat in some food establishment that has been identified as being supportive of the Zionist state. Then they get accused and they get attacked also on that front. And therefore, people find it very difficult to actually even start a conversation because this binary position of either that or this is a conversation stopper.
I think it's about both sides, like the person with a lot more knowledge and the person with less knowledge. It all boils down to having the emotional maturity and also good communication skills to be like, okay, I know a lot about this, but I'm not going to lecture you about it. You be open and approachable about it, right? And then for the person who doesn't know much, it would be putting your ego aside and don't feel ashamed to be like, actually, I don't know much about it. Can you tell me more? Like, be curious. So it takes two sides to work. Yeah.
If somebody who doesn't even know about the issue, I wouldn't suddenly talk about boycotting Starbucks, right? But also, I think fundamentally a problem is, which is something Audrey alluded to earlier, which is Singaporeans don't even like to talk about politics, amongst friends, right? And then I hear some people say, oh, I don't talk politics and religion with friends. Then I say, what do you talk about? The weather? Or what is it? Like, isn't
money.
These things? And money, yes. So things which are politics is something so fundamental to us, or it affects every part of our lives, right? And if we see that through that lens, right, being comfortable talking with politics, then I think all of these other things will follow as well. But at the same time also, for those who are very, very, like myself, I would say very, very passionate about this, we must think about expanding our circle as much as possible, not excluding, right? Maybe some people are just ambivalent, some people are more unaware. I think we must try to expand our circles as much as possible.
So we are now down to our very last prompt. Can everyone please step to the back for the one last time? So we have our final prompt. Understanding difficult issues like Gaza can strengthen our social cohesion. If you agree, please step forward.
Such a softball.
Okay, since this is quite a simple statement, let me throw in one more question as well. Based on whatever you have discussed just now, what do you think this discussion on Gaza reflect on our state of multiracialism in Singapore?
I think the situation is a bit mixed. So on one hand, you still see the problems Imran mentioned earlier, right? Whether it's conflating Judaism with Zionism, and then you see the other side where no matter what Israel does, it cannot be wrong because this is divinely ordained, right? So you see that still. So that reflects the difficulties, especially for a state to manage these different things. Because if it's theological, how do you deal with it? So that's, I guess, the more depressing part. The more encouraging side is I see young people across races, across religions, even older people, older people that I've had in my DMs, people say they are 70 years old and they never knew about this. And so I have seen this mobilization across races and religions. And these two exist at the same time. So I cannot say that, the situation is completely bleak or it's completely great. And the only way forward, right, is to have more discussions, because whether we like it, whether we don't, we share the space with other people. And those other people may disagree with us fundamentally, politically, morally. We don't have to like them, but we still share the space. So the only way forward is to have more discussions, even with those that we disagree with and we dislike.
One of the issue that brought up about the difficult issue like Gaza, and it's about labels. I think Imran brought it up, right? It's just because we disagree with one side, you label us as A, anti-Semite, or B, terrorist. It's like, is it so, binary in that sense that it's just one or the other? And why do we keep labeling people? We can have different opinions. And I think it's important to have that conversation. And however difficult and challenging it might be, but then Singaporeans say that, Gaza is difficult, but talking about transport is not. Talking about Palestine or the issue of Palestine Israel is going to be challenging. But talking about our government, we seem to be quite open about it. It's a free flow. So at what level do we say that it's a difficult issue? It's just how I see it. So, there will always be all of us will have difficult conversations. But are we willing to have that conversation in the first place? I think that's a start.
Well, for me, it boils down to what can contribute to like a good and healthy amount of social cohesion, right? It's things like empathy, kindness, generosity, and things like that. And understanding the issue in Gaza really puts things into perspective. Like, you can see that we are all in 2025. We are looking at the same sun. And yet, people there are thinking about, will I be killed by an airstrike? Can I survive another night? And then here we are going about our day like, we are getting coffee, we are traveling. So it really puts things into perspective.
I think we start from the standpoint that we are already a very diverse society, which means we are not just religiously, culturally, or ethnically diverse, but we have people with very different opinions. And I think it's about time that we acknowledge it, bring it to the surface, and we learn how to develop the muscles in order to deal with our differences, rather than to just sweep it under the carpet. And that will accentuate a lot of stereotypes, prejudices, and uninformed opinions. So I think in the interest of social cohesion, we should be discussing this, but at the same time also, we should educate people on how to have civic conversations. These issues are not really difficult, but it requires courage, right? A brave space, as I would call it. The difficulty is when people are not listening, when people are just within their echo chamber and they just want to put a statement out, but they are not willing to reconsider their own views in the light of what they've heard from other people. That's where the difficulty is. The difficulty is also because we are inundated by a lot of information, sentiments and opinions from everywhere. And sometimes some of these opinions may not be useful or may not be contextualized in our situation. And then we get carried away by other contexts that may not really be useful for Singapore's context. That's where the difficulty is. But I think there are enough people in Singapore who are level-minded, who are reasonable, who are able to carry those conversations forward. And I think we should allow spaces for people to discuss this in a reasonable manner.
Just to add on to what was mentioned, how such issues actually awaken us to the privileges that we have as Singaporeans, and how it doesn't hurt to actually pay attention to the news and explore something that we're not very knowledgeable in, and also how to link back to the ability of us as a multiracial society to have such conversations. I think so far it's been managed quite well, and we haven't actually seen interracial conflicts happening as a result of the Gaza issue in Singapore. So I think that could be a sign that it's possible to take a step forward and to have more of such discussions, especially because it was actually raised as an issue during this year's general elections. It shows that it actually appeals to quite a broad audience among Singaporeans. And so this could be another issue that we can have further discussion about, and yes, it can strengthen us as a society.
I travel a lot to different parts of the world, Asia, to the West, and I'm always very proud to tell my friends in different parts of the world that in Singapore, we can sit together, eat together, especially for those of us who have served army, with people from different race and religion. And I thought this room represented that, because we are all from different race and religion and we can talk about a difficult issue. And I think many Singaporeans are very much like us. They may not have the depth to talk deep, but I think generally we can talk about these issues without getting into a conflict. The one thing I'm very sure about Singaporeans on these Gaza issues is that everyone that I've spoken to, they have empathy. They may not understand the political context, they may not understand the historical context, but they have empathy. Just now when I was doing the makeup, and the makeup artist say, oh, it's so sad that this thing is happening. Right, so even for him, he may not be in the discussion, but the one thing in common is that we are all empathetic over what is happening in Gaza. Right, so that's social cohesion for me.
Thank you for your respectful and candid sharing. We have come to the end of this discussion, but it will not be the end of our dialogue.
Acting Minister in charge of Muslim Affairs, Dr. Faisal Ibrahim, will join us in the next episode. He will address the key discussions you have raised and keep this important conversation going.
These are real signs and real symptoms of the effect of identity politics. If not careful, may just lose what we have built.
So once again, thank you everyone for joining us today, and good night.
Thank you.